We're ready, Andy.
I call the Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Rourke, please take the roll.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Ms. Osles? Mr. Friesen?
Present.
Mr. Collins?
Present.
Ms. Dickerson?
Present.
Mr. Cox? Chair Taylor?
Present. All right, we're moving on to approval of the minutes. I need a motion and a second.
I move
Second.
to approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, by voice vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on to approval of findings of facts for case VAR 2024-003 for 4477 South Pennsylvania Street. Do I have a motion and a second?
I move to approve it.
Second.
Let's do a voice vote again. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. There are 5 members present tonight. Therefore, affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Inglewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal the decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits issued for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. Procedure for the meeting is that the case will be introduced and an overview will be given by staff. Applicant will present their request and the reasons the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board, and then if needed, staff will address the board again. The public hearing for case VAR 2024-006 for 3234 South Pearl Street. The applicant is Felipe Correa. This public hearing is now open. The applicant is requesting a waiver from the requirement that short-term rental be owner-occupied in the R1C zone district. I have verification and publication of posting for the subject property that I'll pass around for the board. Staff, could you come forward for an overview?
Raise your right hand.
Oh, yeah.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth of this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Eric Sampson, Planner 2 with Community Development.
Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. So what you're hearing tonight is a waiver request for the short-term rental regulations. This is a property located at 3234 South Pearl Street. Short-term rental waivers may be granted when the Board of Adjustment and Appeals determine, based on representations in the application and at the public hearing, that the following 3 criteria are met. The first criteria is that conditions peculiar to the property or owner exist that do not apply generally to all STRs. In this situation, when City Council approved the short-term rental regulations, the primary residency requirement for properties located in the M1 and M2 medical zone districts was waived due to the lack of quality housing options near the hospitals. At the same time, Council established the waiver from the primary residency requirement for individuals working directly with these hospitals, but happen to be located outside the medical zone districts in a residential zone district neighborhood. I would like to note that the applicant's property is located about approximately a block and a half north of the medical district. And between the narrative provided to Community Development and Craig Hospital, featuring the property as a local area accommodation, sufficient evidence has been provided to prove that the property owner is working closely with Inglewood Medical Facilities. The second criteria is that there are alternate effective means of assuring owner oversight and regulatory compliance. Mr. Correa is the current primary resident of 3234 South Pearl, but plans to reside in Denver to be closer to his place of employment if the waiver is approved. As stated in his narrative, he will be nearby and available if any issues should arise. There is a current STR license on the property, which is valid through the end of this week. It expires November 15th. And during the year that he has had this license, staff has received no complaints or any concerns regarding this property operating as a short-term rental. The third criteria is that the STR will not alter the essential character of the area. And since the property will be continued to be used as a short-term rental, which is allowed in all residential zone districts, the continued use of the property as an STR will not alter the residential character of the neighborhood. And the applicant's proximity to the property will provide the opportunity for prompt resolution should any issues arise. As was done with a similar waiver request, in 2023, the board approved the waiver on for 1 year and instructed the applicant to keep a record of guests staying at the property and that they provide a reason for their stay to ensure that the STR is being used for medical purposes. Staff recommends doing the same in this case, allowing a 1-year waiver to be issued for the property, and then have the applicant provide evidence that guests are utilizing the property for medical visits, and then when the applicant reapplies for a waiver next year, the board will be able to review and determine whether the waiver should remain in place, should be rescinded, or should be approved for a period greater than 1 year. So overall, community development staff recommends approval of this waiver request.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board for staff at this time?
I have a question. One of the things that was submitted in our packet was this list, local housing options for Craig Hospital 2023.
Yes,
And this property is listed on there.
yes.
Is there any reason why we don't have a record of how much it was used for medical housing in the last year? You didn't?
That's not something we inquired about.
Okay. Let's see, I think I had another question. You said, did I read it correctly that you had verified that there was an ongoing relationship with Craig Hospital?
Yes.
Was there any reason why we didn't get documentation?
So the applicant did provide us later with some email correspondence that he had with Craig with establishing the property on that list. That's in front of you now, but that was received after the staff packet went out.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? All right, thank you. The applicant may now come forward to testify in this case. Please state your name and address the secretary who will administer the oath.
My name is Felipe Correa. My address is 3234 South Pearl Street. And what was the other question, sorry?
Sorry,
I'll swear you in.
swear. She'll
Do you
swear you in.
swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so we've received the material that you submitted. Is there anything else you would like to add to present your case tonight?
Yes. First, thanks for the opportunity to speak here. I'm going to start with who I am and the reasons why I want to do this, and then I'll finish with some general information. I'm Felipe. I'm 31 years old. I moved to the United States 3 years ago. I don't have a family here. I have friends that reside in Denver. And I am a software engineer. I work for Deloitte, the tax and audit company, and they are located in Denver downtown. The first reason why I want to do this is because I want to reside closer to the office. A year ago, when I purchased this property, Deloitte allowed us to work from home completely, and they had no plans to come back. But now employees are coming back to the office, and they are requiring more traveling. So that's the first reason. The second one, as Eric stated before, I have the STR license in place. It's for a smaller part of the house, and I saw how patients look for houses close to the hospital. They're always reaching out, asking for it, and I had to deny because, unfortunately, that house is too small for patients or anybody with disabilities. So, for your question, last year I could not rent it to anybody because it was a smaller part of the property. And as a general information, the types of requests that I get, first, I do not have instant booking allowed, so they have to send a message and the reasons why they're coming. And the types of renters that come are first, patients' families, second, professionals coming. Right now, there's somebody renting the smaller part for the long term. They are coming from California. His name is Asher, and he fixes hail damage on cars. And the third category would be neighbors' families. So for the holidays, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, their families like to come and visit their families, and they stay at the house. I work directly with Craig Hospital. I can't say I rent the house entirely to patients because it's based on demand, but I do plan to rent it mostly to patients, and I plan to implement 2 techniques to do that. First, marketing. So on the listing, I already have description saying this is the perfect house for patients' families or people that are staying at the Craig Hospital. And the second, if granted, I will improve the house with accessibility things like ramps and more like things that they can hold, so patients can see that it's actually a house for patients' families and patients, and not a house for, general short-term rental purposes. And yeah, that's all.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board for the applicant?
Yep, I've got a couple. So I know you mentioned there's a smaller part, and is it 2 separate units on the same property then, or is it a single house?
Yes, 2 completely separate parts. It has an ADU with a garage.
Okay,
And then the main house. I currently live in the main house. And then the part that I was renting is in the back. So in the past month, I had to find a place closer to Denver, and I rented out. So I went to that place, and now the main house is rented in it's more than 30 days.
okay. Yep.
So that person comes also from California. His son had a terrible accident, and they left a letter as evidence.
So then, just for some clarity there, then would you be planning on continuing to rent out the 1 unit as a long-term and then the second as the short-term? Would you be
Yes.
moving to both being short-term rentals?
No,
Okay,
as part of the ordinance, I saw that you can never have both at the same time. So my plan is the smaller unit should be long-term rental,
okay,
and the main unit will be short-term rental.
okay, that makes sense. And then my second question, I know you said that you're moving to Denver. Is this the only rental that you currently have?
Yes.
Thank you, I think that's all I had.
Yeah, I had those exact questions, so I'm answered.
Mr. Friesen?
Do you have any idea about how much has been medical use, say, in the last year since you've been renting it?
It hasn't been a lot because, as I said, the house was a smaller part of it. It was the ADU. So since patients and their families, they come usually with like 3 or 4 people, the house could not really host them, so.
I do have one follow-up question to that then. Would you be comfortable, so in the past, and the kind of reference what we've done in the past was to actually have a formal record be kept by you on what the purpose of the number of night stays were and why they were renting it. Would you be willing to, in that scenario, if you didn't have enough medical rentals to kind of hit that 50-60% or whatever, would you be willing to deny somebody just because you need to wait for somebody that's medical in order to meet the requirements for the variance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's the whole opportunity cost thing. So if you take somebody that is not for medical purposes, then the house is not available for somebody else.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Yeah, Mr. Cole.
Yeah, I'm curious, you had mentioned improving the property to improve accessibility. Have you had to turn away a potential resident because of the current state of accessibility on your property?
Yes. 2 months ago, somebody reached out and they wanted to stay at the house so badly because their son needed medical treatment at Craig. And they asked for the address of the property because on Airbnb you can't see it. I gave them the address, they drove by, and they said, the house is great, but we can't because it has stairs. And my son is 6'5", and he's on a wheelchair. And that's the reason I want to make those improvements.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? All right,
Well, I actually have
Go
one.
ahead.
I know you're going to improve the property, but what's the timeline for that? Because it seems like it's hindering you from
Yes.
renting it to medical personnel.
Yes, I plan to start those improvements as soon as the end of winter. So when it stops snowing around February, March, I will make those improvements.
You can't count on that here. It was unusual that we got the snow we did.
Right. As soon as we get less snow, then I will start those improvements.
any additional questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't see anyone, but is there anyone, any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request?
The letter that you received,
Yes, so we received a letter that was referenced in the applicant's testimony as well from Buddy Lee Brown, who's the secretary of the OCPFA Local 3631, which is the OC firefighters. So this was dated November 13th. And the subject is support for owner occupancy exemption for the short-term rental for families of patients at Craig Hospital. And it says, "Dear members, I'm writing you today as a concerned parent and temporary resident of Englewood, staying here while my son undergoes intensive rehabilitation for a spinal cord injury at Craig Hospital. The rental property where we are staying has become an essential refuge for us during this challenging time, providing us the stability, accessibility, and proximity to Craig's world-class care that are critical to my son's recovery. Craig Hospital stands as one of the premier rehabilitation facilities for spinal cord injuries in the country, drawing families from all over the United States who are navigating long, unpredictable paths of recovery for their loved ones. This rental property not only supports our needs, but fills a critical gap for families like ours. The peace of mind, convenience, and security it offers allows families to focus on supporting their loved ones during these incredibly challenging days. As you consider the exemption request for this property, I urge you to recognize its unique and irreplaceable value to a family like ours. Requiring owner occupancy in this case would jeopardize access to an invaluable resource for those seeking care at Craig Hospital. Losing this property as an option for Craig families would be a great disservice to those who rely on Englewood for temporary lodging during their loved one's recovery. I respectfully ask that the council grant an exemption, allowing this property to continue serving as a sanctuary for the many families who depend on the care at Craig Hospital. By supporting this request, you are not just approving a short-term rental exemption, You're providing support, stability, and comfort to families during their greatest time of need. Thank you very much for your time, consideration, and commitment to serving the needs of our community. And it's signed sincerely by Lee Brown. So that is another piece of, that will be a part of the record in favor of this request. Are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition of this request? Seeing none, does staff have any additional comments at this time? Okay,
I have a quick question for staff.
all right.
And this is just for a point of clarity on my part. So
Sure.
when they do have two units like that, what is kind of the STR rule around, and how does that work when one might be a long-term, one might be a short-term? How does that work as far as how that covers it?
Right, so only when they apply for a short-term rental license, if they're in a situation like this, only one of the pieces of, one of the units on the property can be used as a short-term rental, and that is specified in the short-term rental license. And so the other part, that's usually where their primary residency is. In this case, it could be long-term rentals as well.
So does it actually specify which of those two buildings then would fall under the STR, or is it
Yes.
just one of the two would?
Yes,
Okay.
because this particular property has a separate address for that separate unit.
Oh, it does, okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions while we have Mr. Sampson? All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. The public hearing is now closed. I need a motion so we can start our discussion.
I move to approve variance 2024-006 for 3234 South Pearl Street, Englewood, Colorado 80113, for a waiver of Englewood Municipal Code 5-31-3A2 that waives the residency requirement of the owner to be occupied for the property in an R1C zone district.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All right, discussion, folks.
Well, I'd like to have that amended and added to, as far as the formal request, and that we do ask the applicant to keep a record of the guests staying in their property, and that we make it a one-year term as we did the previous one. So we would add that wording to the motion if you guys agree as well.
I second the amendment.
All right.
We can have the discussion and then.
Yeah, we can have the discussion.
I think that it weighs in the applicant's favor that he's willing to improve the property, but I would not want that to be a contingency of approval, so much so that maybe that could weigh against what we consider predominant. It can be hard, like Felipe stated, to guarantee what type of interest you're gonna have in a property, but to meet the spirit of bringing your house to meet that need, I think goes a long way.
Yep, agree completely. I think he's, the location's exactly what the city was kind of intending. It sounds like when they passed the waiver specifically, something is close to the hospital. It sounds like he's already been in contact with them via email. Obviously, it's posted on their website, so it's as far as the conversations we've had, that's more than I think the hospital's done in a lot of cases with partnership.
Right.
So that's been good to see.
Did you have something?
I agree with all of that. I would just, this isn't a requirement, it's just a comment. We get our most snow in March, so I wouldn't wait till February. If you've got a couple of weeks, there are a lot of things you can do outside, even in the snow. I've got contractors working in the snow all the time. So that's just an aside.
Thank you. So based on the discussion, I think we might be expecting a motion to amend the
I would
motion.
move to amend, the motion is made to say that it would be for a one-year period with instruction to the applicant to keep a record of the guests staying at their property and provide a reason for their stay to ensure that the STR provides service to Englewood's medical facilities.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We can do a voice vote for amending the motion. This is not approving at this time, but All those in favor of amending the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so the motion now stands amended. Is there any additional discussion? Are we ready for the vote? All right,
Mr. Cole,
In favor?
Mr. Friesen,
I'm also in favor. I think the first criterion, that special circumstances or conditions peculiar to this short-term rental exist. So I think that criteria is met, as well as the second criteria. It will not weaken the general purposes of the Title V. And the third criterion about how the property owner will provide alternative effective means to regulate that. We've added that somewhat to our motion here.
Mr. Collins,
I agree for the reasons stated, and I would just like to add that on the first criterion, I think the proximity of 20 minutes away, it provides adequate oversight for the property.
Ms. Dickerson,
I agree for the reasons stated.
Chair Taylor.
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we have, so the variance passes, yes, and next on the agenda is staff's choice. Do we have anything today? Do we have a case for next month? Okay.
Not currently, no.
Attorney's choice. Do we have anything tonight?
Nothing for me.
And then board member's choice. Does anyone have anything tonight? Was there still going to be I know last month we had discussed potentially moving the time. I didn't know if that, I think there was going to be some additional research into that.
That would be my fault. We realized that after we had started to publish the agenda for the 7 o'clock time, I think we talked about it either today or yesterday, that, oh, we had talked about maybe moving this, so we will get back on that
Okay.
for the next meeting. My apologies.
All right, thank you very much. We were just curious, so I wanted to bring it up when we got the chance. So, all right, and with that, we are at adjournment. All right, thank you very much.
Have a good holiday season, everybody.